with the first pick in the 2025 NFL Draft.
As the stage rises in the NFL's smallest city, so does excitement.
The NFL selects Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Now the Packers prepare to play host the only way they know how.
What floored the NFL was we suggested we also include, are you offering a bathroom, and tailgating.
This week on Green Bay on Draft, we dive into the pieces of Packers culture all over this event as the state hopes for a good impression with all of the sports world watching. Welcome back. It is the third episode of this limited edition video podcast here at FOX6 Green Bay on Draft. So glad that you have found us, that you are engaging with this content, whether you're watching on Fox Local or listening wherever you get your podcasts. We are honored to be joined today by Fox 6 political reporter Jason Calvi. Jason, thanks for joining Green Bay on Draft.
Awesome to be here, Sam.
So if you're thinking, why in the heck is a political reporter here talking about a sports event? Well, there's a lot of crossover, perhaps, in I guess, looking at what big events can do for cities. And also, it's an all-hands-on-deck effort here at Fox 6. A lot of us are pitching in to do these draft stories, and Jason has one that we will talk about. The focus of this episode is a bit of this Packers pilgrimage that the team, the NFL, are encouraging fans to come and experience, in that if you don't want to pay the money to come to a game, you can go to this free event. You can still get inside Lambeau Field, kind of feel what Packers fans feel, and get that experience kind of checked off your bucket list, so to speak.
That's right.
My first question, have you ever been
to a draft?
To Lambeau Field?
I've been there, yes. I brought the kids, and not for a game, but just to go in the atrium.
Yep.
And see the statues and walk around, see all the the pro shop and all that kind of stuff. So it's I mean, my sons now have gotten really, really, really excited about sports, especially Jonah, who's my 10-year-old. He's taking notes on listening to the radio broadcasts of the Brewers games, and he's taking notes on how they did, and he's listening to the Cubs games as well, coming from the Chicago broadcasters.
Sure.
Blaring into Wisconsin here.
So even as a family experience, there is something for everyone there. In looking at this, we've done some reporting, been up to Green Bay over the last couple of months in preparation and in leading up to this draft. And there's kind of three big pillars that are the NFL is leaning into to make this Packers forward experience. We're talking about rentals, short-term rentals and houses, parking, which is a really interesting. You don't think of parking cars as super interesting, but it is really interesting in Green Bay, given the history and just purely the location of Lambeau Field, smack dab in the middle of a neighborhood. And third, something that Ted Perry had teased, wanted to talk about in the first episode. If you were watching and wrote it down on a piece of paper, I said, no, not yet. Talking about bikes, and that is the Packers training camp tradition that dates back to 1958. So let's start on rentals. Green Bay just doesn't have the hotel space. It's about 8,000 to 9,000 in that area. So obviously they are looking elsewhere where visitors, fans, even employees that are coming to work this draft can stay.
That's right. And so they're looking at people staying in Milwaukee, staying in Madison, staying in Sheboygan, Fond du Lac, around the entire state, or at least this part of the state, and driving up each day for the draft. So there's going to be shuttle buses also, as we're talking about the economic impact. There's going to be shuttle buses leaving Milwaukee every morning, going to Green Bay, taking a busload of football fans from hotels, from bars in Milwaukee to Green Bay, and then they'll come back at midnight or so after the round of draft picks are picked, and they have the excitement of being in Green Bay. They can come back to Milwaukee to stay in their hotels here. So there's going to be a lot of people staying in Milwaukee. We're looking at some of the hotel numbers, and when you're looking at that week of the draft, when you're looking at the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, potentially, front end Wednesday, and then it starts on Thursday with people coming in a day early maybe. That week, particularly the weekend, we had about 10% booked out when you're talking about back in January for Milwaukee for the week of the draft. Now in early April, it was up to 60%. So you see that spike of interest. And what they're estimating is that a large percentage of the people coming to the draft are going to be driving in. So there's not many ways to get to Green Bay unless you're a Vikings fan, right?
Seriously. You're going to have to come up either 43, 41, whichever your preference is. That's also where I think a lot of homeowners and or property owners in Green Bay and in Schwabenand are trying to capitalize on this. Brown County stood up this permitting process for them to convert their homes into short-term rentals. We went up there, we talked with some people that are trying to do this, both property management companies as well as your Joe Schmo elderly couples that have lived in a house for 30, 40 years and are saying, hey, what about us? And it's so interesting, the opportunity to stay within a stone's throw of Lambeau Field in a house where if you have a group of 8 to 10 people, it's probably more cost effective to actually go stay in a house. What is interesting, though, as we continue to get closer and closer, I think, is so many people perhaps were misled or took a bit too big of a swing in posting the price for their house. We saw one that was listed on one of the rental sites for tens of thousands of dollars a night. Wow. And it's like, this is a free event. It's not the Super Bowl, as we've said on this program multiple times. And so, these people are trying to share the experience of living next to an NFL franchise, living literally sometimes in the shadows of Lambeau Field. And they are hoping that as the draft gets closer, maybe people on impulse say, you know what? Yeah, let's go. Hey, great. I found this house we can stay at. Boom. And it's right there. But it says a lot that, especially in the Packers pitch, that they wanted this event to be a statewide event, frankly, because it has to be. They don't have the apparatus in terms of hotels to house that many people.
In your interview with Mark Murphy, he talked about what the NFL required of them in order to get the draft. They didn't qualify in Green Bay.
No,
they have 8 to 9,000 hotels. They had to have 40,000 hotels right in the area for the draft. There's not 40,000 in Green Bay.
So that's their hope for the Super Bowl, which Green Bay, just by virtue of temperature, will never have. But they still want you to have this surplus in that people can easily get around. I think eventually, kind of as a swan song for Murphy, they said, you know what? We're going to give this to you. You guys will figure it out.
Yeah.
And so that's where Milwaukee comes in. Appleton comes in. I mean, I've seen people posting their rental homes up in Door County. So if you're willing to drive a little bit, absolutely, or take a shuttle. And so actually, that's a good segue, because one of the stories that you have done is a Milwaukee tourism group, or a tour group, I should say, that is standing up their own kind of draft-specific tour. How did this come to be, and why are they doing this?
So it's City Tours, MKE, and they're offering a tour just for that week. So it's going to be the Monday before the draft and then through the Monday after the draft. So 1 week only, special tour. City Tours does tours around Milwaukee, historical tours, bar dive tours. But this tour will be just that week of the draft, an NFL-themed tour. There's a lot of history, as you talked with Ted 2 weeks ago or a couple weeks ago about his story, looking at how the NFL draft was actually in Milwaukee at one point in time in the early years. So those are some of the sites that this tour is going to show you. It's going to bring you to the former site of County Stadium, where the Packers would play, and the tour guide is going to show you. This is where the football players did not like playing at County Stadium because it was designed for baseball players.
Yep.
What is baseball equipment? You got a jersey, your glove, your bat. It fits in a small locker. When you have the big pads and the helmet and all that, the football players, there's not enough room for them inside County Stadium, according to the tour guide. So that's going to be all part of this tour, trying to give football fans that are in town, staying at the hotels, a chance to experience more of football culture and that's historical story of Milwaukee hosting the Packers for many games.
And I think that history is taken for granted, especially locally. It's almost like lore that if you grow up in Wisconsin and your parents are Packers fans, then chances are you're a Packers fan. Chances are you're going to hear the lore, the history, and whatever. And it's just what you know growing up here. So you take it for granted. You almost assume that every other franchise has that kind of historical levels to it. They don't. Some do, certainly, but not like this, in that this is this neighborhood franchise. And to that end, I'm sure they talk about on the tour, without County Stadium, without Milwaukee, the Packers may not survive. Yeah. And so I think that it's fitting that all these years later, even though they don't play any more games here in Milwaukee, that they're saying, look, we're bringing a big event here. It's time that the entire state benefits from this. The number that they are throwing out is $94 million. Mm-hmm. I think only $20 million of that is supposed to be like actually in Green Bay proper. Right. So we'll see what happens there.
And that's, Visit Milwaukee. It's the tourism organization here, Convention and Visitors Bureau for Milwaukee. they're not sure what piece of the pie they're going to get, right? They know the estimate for the state is 94 million. When you look at what Detroit got, I mean, that was record-shattering draft last go-round. It was, huge numbers there, 775,000 people. Here in Wisconsin, they're expecting 240 to 300,000. So a smaller crowd, but still the money, I mean, the money for Detroit was $213 million economic impact for Detroit and surrounding counties. We're expecting a lot smaller chunk of that, maybe 94 million, but still that's going to be spread across potentially businesses across this part of the state.
And that's a substantial amount of money that, that figure, economists always attack that figure because they don't know how it's calculated. It's not economists generally coming up with that money or that figure, that total. But Detroit did commission that study. It wasn't them themselves doing it. It was actually a professor. And so that speaks to the level of investment that happens that wouldn't otherwise happen. Sure, you have some events that people will go to in the weekend, but not quite like this.
Yeah, and these people are coming, what that study from the Washington University in St. Louis professor found was the people are traveling in to be part of this draft. And it's kind of what Visit Milwaukee is estimating is that people are likely, the largest percentage of people coming to the draft are coming from a 6-hour drive. So think about what cities are within 6 hours of Green Bay.
A lot.
Yeah.
Especially in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
But they're looking for people to come from all over and kind of have this Packers pilgrimage that they keep talking about, which I want to transition to parking because I find this story so fascinating. We have a very distinct tailgating culture here in Wisconsin. You've been out to opening day with the Brewers before. It's a thing. The Brewers want to protect their pavement almost at all costs. The Packers used to have that. They threw out some of those lots for what is now the Titletown District, and I think most people would say, you know what, that was the right decision. But now, looking at a stadium that I believe its capacity isn't quite 100,000, but it's getting up there. Those people need to park somewhere. And so that's where property owners come in. And whether they're in Green Bay or Ashwaubenon, there are some people that own houses around the Lambeau Field that capitalize on this. They can get upward of maybe 10 to 20 cars on their lot, depending on how big their lot is. There are some lots that just sit vacant and they're used for parking. It's crazy. Yeah.
Have you been out to interview the parking people yet?
Yes. So we talked to one gentleman. His name is Mike Lamar, and I found him just through a Facebook group of people that are trying to either rent their homes or find parking. And his daughter-in-law actually pushed him onto us, and I was like, great, let's talk to him. So Discover Green Bay, which is Visit Milwaukee's counterpart up in Green Bay, has been really working hard to organize resources for people that are coming, especially people that have never been to Green Bay before. It might be a little startling to think, hey, am I just going to leave my pickup truck on some guy's front yard? What am I going to do here? But they actually encourage us. They want the NFL, the Packers, they want people to get that true tailgate experience. And I asked him about that, specifically if he feels like they are the welcoming committee in any way. Take a listen to what he had to say.
And the Packers obviously encourage this because they don't have enough parking for fans to come to the game anyway. Do you think of yourself as kind of like the welcoming committee in a way?
Not really. I just like getting out there, mingling with the people. They do their grilling. They offer hot dogs, brats, whatever they're cooking. They always ask, hey, we got extra. You want some? I'm like, no, I'm good. Don't worry about it. Well, at least have a beer with us or something, So
You're like, okay.
I can do that.
Okay. So we'll have a beer with them. And I think that is so classic Midwest. Again, probably something that we take for granted and that this is our way of life. Yeah, you can park your car on my lawn. Yes, come on in. Like, we'll hang out with you. You can tailgate and just really enjoy this kind of together experience.
What is so they're going to tailgate on the yard. How much are these families charging for the privilege to park on their grass and have a tailgate right there?
So what I didn't realize until I started reporting on this story is that it's organized. A lot of the property owners have gotten together and say, okay, we all need to be in the same ballpark on what we're going to charge, because if we're not, we're only working and negotiating against ourselves. Mike specifically is going for $100 a car. He believes he's on the low end, and that's $100 a day. So if you're going to do all 3 days, that's $300. He can get about 20 cars on his yard, and he's got a corner lot, so he benefits from that. It's not the biggest property, and so I had him kind of walk me through how to do this, and there's a science to it. And when we were there was snow on the ground, and I said, how do you manage this? He's like, oh yeah, I'll just take my snowblower and clear off the yard. I'm like, what? But that is the level of dedication, because think about the money that's on the line. So, that's an easy few $1,000s. He can pay off his property taxes if he fills up his yard those 3 days. That's not how he's going to spend that money, though. I talked to him about this. I said, so what's your intention? What are you going to do? He's like, oh, I'm just going to take that cash. I'm going to walk across the street over to Hinterland, which is there in the Titletown district, and I'm going to buy beer, buy food, and submit that money right back into the local economy.
Really? Wow.
And I said, all right, that's an interesting way to do it, but that money stays local, and I think that's the important factor. You can park in a ramp in downtown Green Bay. In fact, the city's trying to raise the rates for that so that they can cover more of their costs. You could do that, or you could get this experience, again, one that the NFL, that the Packers are pushing, and maybe something that's more memorable.
Yeah, it's going to be an incredible opportunity to see those people with the homemade parking signs park here for $100 a day.
$100 a day. He generally does $20 to $30 for a game day, which I still think is cheap.
Yeah, that's incredible.
When I went to cover opening day, the Brewers opening day at Wrigley Field in Chicago, we parked in like the last available spot at a small, mechanic's garage, maybe 8 blocks away, and it was $80. I'm like, this is Chicago pricing. But one thing to wrap up the parking thought, I thought this was really smart of Discover Green Bay to do. They sent out a questionnaire to property owners within a general radius around Lambeau Field to say, hey, are you willing to have people park on your property? If so, we're going to populate this list and this map where people can see like how close you are, how they should get in touch with you, that sort of thing, so that people have resources. What's also interesting is the questionnaire that comes with it. Do you offer bathrooms? Can people tailgate? Do they have grills, beers, etc.? And that you just are not going to get anywhere else.
So people are going to pay to park. They're going to potentially be using your bathroom. They're going to maybe share a cold one with you, maybe. And they're going to be grilling out.
And that's what they want.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting perspective that if you look at some of these other stadiums that maybe are more downtown, you kind of just miss out on this. It's easier to get to, but you miss out on this camaraderie that happens around the stadium that clearly the NFL recognizes as unique to Green Bay. One more thing that's unique to Green Bay is this bike tradition that started in 1958 when some players in the Packers, instead of taking the long walk from their locker room to the training camp site back in the day, this was actually even before Vince Lombardi was with the Packers, there were some kids that were so enamored with the idea of having a conversation with one of these players. And think about it, at that time, this was really before the NFL blew up in popularity and in size. And so they got this, that's when this tradition started. They would come with their bikes, they would let the player ride the bike, and they would either ride along on the back if there was room or just walk and talk on the way. Started as something that was incredibly grassroots, and it has become such a popular tradition in that the NFL and both the Packers realize bikes in some form have to play a role within this draft. I remember I went to this event in December in which the Packers were kind of pitching to local businesses about being involved. And they mentioned that, yeah, we are working on something pertaining to bikes. And, when we get more details, you'll know about it. And I kept asking about it because I'm so fascinated with this story. There is a local company in Green Bay. It's called Elevate 97. They do signs, and a lot of the signage in Lambeau Field, actually, they have connections with the Packers. Their owners, one of them sits on the Packers board, and we've probably seen their work and really just not have even noticed or believed it. And one thing that they do is they wrap bikes. They did this when, if you remember, Detroit kind of as a passing of the torch took the this football on a ferry over Lake Michigan to, I want to say it was Milwaukee actually, and then it was taken by bicycle, we'll say, up to Green Bay. So Elevate 97 is individually wrapping or skinning 32 bikes, one for each NFL team with their individual logo that are somehow going to be used in the draft. And I just think that's a great way to incorporate what is such a Packers-specific tradition into something that is league-wide, frankly, even beyond the scope of the NFL in the number of people that will watch this on television. And it's just a good way to kind of put that Green Bay spin on it.
Yeah. And I mean, incredible experience for those children over the decades that they've been able to have that relationship with a pro ball player and having them ride their bikes and hear that tradition continues on with the NFL draft, expanding it to other teams that are not players. I don't know what they're going to do with these bikes yet. Do you know exactly? Are they going?
We don't know exactly. I think that's a secret, perhaps an Easter egg they're holding on to. I asked Aaron Popke with the Packers, he's their director of public affairs. I asked him point blank, are we going to see the number one pick in the draft after this person is selected? They haven't signed the contract yet, but they're basically looking at a contract north of $30 million. Are they going to be riding a bike out on stage? He said no. That would be awesome, but no. And, obviously there's a huge investment there. I think realistically, is there a chance that maybe some college football players don't know how to ride bikes? I think that's a possibility. No one's saying that. I'm just saying that. I just think of the emotion. I just think of the emotion that may overtake you in this moment in which you've been working your whole life for this. Yeah. You probably don't want to go ride a bike in front of millions of people that are watching on television, but it is really interesting. And I just love that tradition. So unique to Green Bay. If this draft was still in New York, this wouldn't happen. Even in Chicago, it's not going to happen. So I'm glad, as somebody who's grown up here, who's been familiar with this tradition, that it's going to be exposed to even more people now.
And that's one of the things that you reported was that this draft in particular is going to be incorporating some more local traditions than we've seen in other drafts. They're going to be more Packers and Green Bay elements in the design and other aspects as well.
Yeah, if you notice it in the logo that's already been out, in the renderings of the stage, it's green. It kind of has that cream, beige, almost even lumber feel. I know Carl Deffelbaugh is working on a story about this wood artist that's based in our area, actually, that's making a logo for each of the teams based out of wood. And so it is really Packers forward. They also came up with a dive bar experience so that people can experience that as well, which again, it's just our way of life. Okay. We know that Wisconsin has a big drinking culture. It makes sense that this would come forward. I've seen from some kind of diehard Packers fans that are like, no, that's going to be too commercial. You should go to insert list of bars that are actually dive bars and you'll get that experience. But I think the NFL is doing its best to market Green Bay, Wisconsin, the novelty and the uniqueness of it to anyone that's coming to this.
It's a city of how many people live in Green Bay? It used to be when they started 30,000 people and everybody was part of, helping the Packers, and then it come to, as we talked about last time, coming to Milwaukee, to help stabilize the finances.
It's a fifth the size of Milwaukee.
105,000 people in Green Bay,
there
right?
You go.
So it's the smallest city that's hosting a professional sports team, right?
And it's a huge event.
Yeah.
It's the biggest event of the off season.
And it's the biggest event, as you mentioned in one of the previous podcasts, the biggest event Green Bay is ever going to host.
Yeah, the Packers are convinced of that. They're hoping it's not the last big event, so they really have to do it right.
I know Ted's lobbying for a Super Bowl in the future, in the far distant future.
Are you surprised by that?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so. Off of the bikes, we're gonna do an interesting little game here, and I told Jason that this was gonna happen, but he didn't know what it was going to be. So if you're watching, New Era came out with their caps, their draft caps specific to this draft, in that once the player is selected, they're given a hat, they walk out, they dap up Commissioner Roger Goodell, and it's kind of an afterthought, I think, to most people, but if you're really into collectibles, into your team, you're paying attention to this. So this year, New Era put a pin on each of the 32 teams' hats. That pin is specific to the team. So I picked out a couple here that I'm going to have you guess. I'm going to start with the easy one. So we're going to put this up for you. You can see it right now. I'll describe it if you're listening just on a podcast version. What we're seeing right now is a bicycle. This should be no surprise whose team this is as we go and we look at the full hat. It is indeed
Green Bay Packers.
the Green Bay Packers.
I got that one. Thanks to your story.
Yeah, and so I'm happy to have gotten you off to a 1-for-1 start. Okay, so let's go to the next one. It is a number. The number is 142.2. Jason, if you had to guess, which team is this?
142.2. Can I get a clue?
That clue,
The football fans, diehards that are watching, they know this right away?
not necessarily. I actually had Ted go through this game, and he didn't know this one right away.
Okay. I'm going to go with the Chicago Bears.
That is incorrect. 142.2 is a decibel level. Would that change it for you?
It doesn't change it for me.
Okay.
The Denver Broncos?
No, it is the Kansas City Chiefs. In that is the decibel level they set, which I believe is a record at Arrowhead Stadium there in Kansas City for like the loudest outdoor event
Ever. Wow,
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's kind of niche.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a bit of a tricky one. We'll start with this one now. Describing it, it is a umbrella, and it is black with some gold accents.
Seattle?
No.
Not the rain? The
Nope.
gold accents?
The colors here are what you should be paying attention to.
Which is, what are the colors there?
Black and gold.
Black and gold. Pittsburgh.
No.
No.
It is the New Orleans Saints. In that you'll see that umbrella often on Bourbon Street and down in there, which I've never been, but I want to go. So he's 1 for 3 if you're keeping score at home. We're looking at a skull.
So everything's kind of symbolic so far, right? Like the bike, like you'd have to know about the kind of the culture of this. So the fact that it's a skull, I mean, I would think the Buccaneers, because they're pirates and pirates have skulls on their flags.
And they have a pirate ship in their stadium.
So is this...
You are correct. It is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Did Ted get that one right?
Here. He didn't get it at first, but he got it eventually.
Okay. So is that 2 for 5?
That is 2 for 4. We got 2 more. This one is a map of the U.S. It's got an American flag in the background and a big star over the front of it.
So that would be Dallas for the star, right?
That's true. They call themselves America's team. It's well disputed in press outside of Dallas. But as we look at the whole hat, yep, that makes a lot of sense. And I have to imagine that'll probably be the most popular just by virtue of their franchise and the fact that everybody who is a Cowboys fan would go with that. Last one is a bit of a tricky one, at least I thought. Ted got this one right away.
Okay, it's Bigfoot.
We're looking at Bigfoot, a Yeti, essentially, and he is wearing a jersey with the number 12 on it. So if you are a dedicated fan, you would know this, but you're at...
Not a dedicated fan.
You're at
I need Jonah, my 10-year-old.
3 of 5. I bet Jonah would get this.
So, I mean, because I'm seeing Bigfoot, I'm thinking Colorado, I'm thinking the Denver Broncos just because of the mountains. And I mean, we've had Bigfoot sightings in Wisconsin too, right? What is it called?
I think allegedly.
Allegedly. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go with the Denver Broncos, but the fact that you're not giving me some positive reinforcement, I number 12. So we're thinking
12.
Bigfoot.
I'll give you a hint on 12 and see if this
The Patriots?
No, but that's a good thought. 12 is symbolic in that this franchise says it has the 12th man. That is their fans because they give them a home field advantage. Wow. You already actually said this for a different one, this team.
I said the Chicago, but I can't be Chicago. It can't
be Chicago
because I would have known that growing up in the Chicago suburbs that we don't call it the 12th man.
No.
So
Jason, everybody knows where Bigfoot lives. Come on.
I still
That's
think
a
the
good
Denver
suggestion.
Broncos would be the best right there out in the Rocky Mountains. But the Patriots?
No. Wrong coast. It is the Seattle Seahawks. Again, they consider themselves with a loud home field advantage to have the 12th man. I believe they may even have the number 12 retired. I'm not sure. Anyway.
Jared Harrington, who's one of our photojournalists here, is going to be very upset with me that I didn't get that one right. He's originally was born in Seattle.
So when those hats came out, senior producer Jeff Yu was like, dude, you got to do this. I'm like, all right, we'll play the game. So actually, if you're keeping score, You tied Ted.
Oh, nice.
So he's going to be thrilled to hear about that. Another interesting point that we should talk about is that the expectations, we kind of mentioned economic impact off the top, but the expectations for an event like this maybe don't always live up to, or what happens is doesn't always live up to the expectations. We know that locally here in Milwaukee with the 2024 Republican National Convention, in which you were running around like a madman, a lot of us were, but you especially in that politics are your beat. Can you, for perhaps a different audience, spell out what was anticipated and maybe what happened instead?
So for years and years, remember, Milwaukee was picked for the DNC in 2020, and then that all kind of crumbled because of the pandemic. It went virtual, and so the economic impact wasn't there. But for years, when we were looking for the DNC and then the RNC in 2024, there was discussion from Visit Milwaukee and convention organizers that the economic impact based on previous conventions, the economic impact for Milwaukee and surrounding areas was going to be $200 million. We are still waiting. Here we are in April of 2025. We're still waiting. Visit Milwaukee, the host committee, have commissioned a study to figure out what the economic impact was for the RNC in Milwaukee in 2024. We're still waiting for that economic impact study. But Chicago did one. And surprisingly, theirs came back in October.
On their DNC. Which was a month after.
Yeah, so they hosted the convention in August, and then this report comes out in the fall of the same year. And it found huge economic impact for the city as well as the suburbs of Chicago. We're talking about all of those people that are coming, 50,000 people expected for the conventions, and they're staying in the hotels, they're eating in the restaurants, those sorts of things. So looking at the numbers out of Chicago that I have here, $221 million in spending by visitors, and the total economic impact for Chicago and Chicagoland was $371 million.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. And again, a lot of that money is because people are staying in hotels, they're going to the restaurants, the convention itself, the stage and the lighting and the television infrastructure, all of that. When you combine all of the convention-related activities, there's 162 of that 221 million. So the large chunk of the money is the convention, and then people going out into the community for food and drink and where to stay as well. So that's one thing that we're seeing with the political conventions, and that's what we're trying to figure out exactly what that economic impact was in Milwaukee. We're still waiting for the report, but we can say, the federal government gave the city of Milwaukee $75 million for a security grant. They gave both Chicago and Milwaukee $75 million. That was an increase from previous conventions after 9/11. The city's host cities would get $50 million. Chicago, Milwaukee lobbied, say, hey, inflation, it's been a long time. They did. They bumped it up to $75 million each for security. That went to the local police department. They got to keep that money. They got to spend it on things like a new command center, water security, just all kind of different things that they spent that money on. And that money stays in Milwaukee. As far as the hotels, there was I think a $20 million boom compared to the previous year from 2024 to 2023.
Yep.
So hotels got a boom. But as far as the restaurants, when we looked at the sales tax numbers from July of 2024 and July of 2023, there was a drop in restaurants and bars. And that was what, ahead of time, the bars and restaurants thought they were going to see a surge of people going to the restaurants. It tended that people stayed at the convention, then maybe went back to the hotel or went to private parties out in Milwaukee. So the restaurants, bars, maybe didn't see as much money as they were hoping.
Yeah, and the reason that we bring this up is twofold, in that they're both big events with large footprints. Obviously, it's a little different when the Secret Service is manning these footprints and you have to have your entire car checked, and it's probably more of a deterrent. The Green Bay footprint for the draft is pretty large, and there are decent road closures around it, but while it is still a secure event, it doesn't come with the bells and whistles that a national political convention does bring. Again, this is sold as a benefit to the entire state of Wisconsin, not just Green Bay. But when we look back at the RNC, I can remember Ben Handelman on day one or day two, going down to the 3rd Ward, which, if you're unfamiliar, is a beautiful area, historic area in downtown Milwaukee, right along the river. Kind of abuts the lake. There's a bunch of shops, a bunch of restaurants. It's a good place to be, and it was kind of empty.
It was dead.
And so when you hear elected leaders saying, hey, this is going to be a huge event, It's not red, it's not blue, it's green. If I had $1 for every time Mayor Cavalier Johnson said that, we would be rich. The sell can be one thing. What actually happens can be another. And I do think hearing from property owners, hearing from some of the people that are looking for parking, Mike, who we mentioned earlier, he has a couple people that have already reserved, but he's hoping as we get closer that phone's going to ring a lot more. And I think you can understand the hesitancy when you look back at these prior events, especially in Milwaukee. We're still waiting on the numbers for the RNC, but we know anecdotally in some areas it wasn't what it was sold to be.
Yeah, it wasn't for some of those bars and restaurants, but I mean, just based on some of the numbers, there are some good signs that the city and the region are going to reach that number. But again, it's like, what's going on in Green Bay, right? That's the focus today. And one of the things that was interesting in your Airbnb story was that these were beautiful properties. People were all gung-ho about welcoming people into their homes for the draft, and they're still waiting, which was surprising.
They're still waiting, and it's disappointing, but I think some people ruined it for others. I talked to a property management company that's been studying the market, and they think that people could just kind of came out guns a-blazing initially, and that they didn't know what they were going to get. They've never hosted this before. How would they know? But again, you have somebody listing their property for tens of thousands of dollars. Okay, come on. Like who in their right mind is going to pay for that? Probably a corporation. But how many corporations are coming to the draft? That's just not. It's not the same as other major events. And you know, I do think they're right to have some nerves. There's been a bit of a market correction. So his message, there was 1919 properties there based in Green Bay, was, look, if you were on the fence about coming, you saw the market several months ago and you thought, dang, this is really expensive. I don't want to spend that kind of money. Look again. I think you'd be surprised at how much the numbers have come down, because at the end of the day, just getting people in is what they want to do. They want you to stay in homes or hotels, and the hotels up in Green Bay are looking at a good occupancy rate. We know that from our news partners at Fox 11. It's not just here to have this time; it's here to make an impression on that person that comes, but then a secondary impression on their family, their friends, their coworkers. That in conversations after this draft, they'll think, you know what, so and so went to Green Bay. I should go do that too.
Yeah. And you can do it for much cheaper than if you went to Disney World, right? I mean, or any of the other tourist places.
I've never actually had to pay for a trip to Disneyland. Okay. I went when I was a little, tot. Have you paid for a trip to Disneyland?
Not with the kids. Okay. No. That's probably why.
Which I think says it.
We'd rather go to Green Bay, right? We'd
rather
go. I mean, I'm sure we'd rather see Lambeau Field and go to the restaurants down there and take in all that has to offer.
Do you, in talking with the companies that are providing tours in Milwaukee, and again, Milwaukee being without game day traffic, an hour, 30-minute drive, 40-minute drive to Green Bay, do you sense that they are perhaps nervous, or is it really just excitement in terms of the business they could get and they want to get?
I think they're excitement because I think they're also factoring in that people are going to be driving in, and so it's kind of like a spur of the moment kind of a thing. Like, hey, the weather's looking good for Green Bay that weekend. Wouldn't it be great to finally check it off the bucket list to go to an NFL draft, and it's only 5 hours away, 6 hours away? Let's drive up to Green Bay if we're coming in from Indianapolis or Detroit or somewhere like that. So yeah, let's go back up to let's go to Green Bay. So I think there's an excitement right now. We looked at some of the tour buses, so they're going to have these big big buses that are going to take people from the bars. There's going to be a couple, like Stenny's, it has a tour bus that's going to take people all the days of the draft up there. There's other buses as well. The hotels are also offering these shuttle buses. And some of them, I was looking for tickets, and some of the options are sold out already for the first day of the draft, right? The first round.
And that's the big one.
Yeah, that's the big one.
If you can only go to one day, you want to go to the first round because that's where the money is made, and that's where the decisive playmakers are going to be picked. And we should note, if you're unaware, a lot of these bars do shuttles on game days. It's a great way. If you're more the partier, you want to drink responsibly, not have to worry about driving. You go to the bar, you generally get a couple bar tickets, then you have to pay for the shuttle ticket, drink tickets, I should say, not bar tickets. And then you go up, have your fun, you come back down, and it's the safest way if you are into that party atmosphere to do that. I'm not surprised that is a popular option for people, especially in our area, that are perhaps hesitant to go get a hotel when they think, I only live on a good day 2 hours away, if that.
Yeah. And how does this sound? So the Brathaus is offering one option. It's $85.
Yeah.
And it's not just the trip there and back, the round trip ticket, but they're also offering all you can drink beer, hard seltzer, and soda. So, I mean, that's like, can you imagine driving for 2.5 hours and drinking? I couldn't imagine that. I feel like I'd get sick or something, but it's an option for people, $85.
It's not for the faint, not for the weak.
Right. And the bar is going to be opening early anyway for people. Stenny's is $85. Milwaukee Food and City Tours $85. You talked about the parking people kind of coming together, and it seems like at least the shuttles that I found are $85 as well. Some of them offer drinks, some of them alcoholic drinks, some just soda and things like that.
You think about what a beer goes for these days.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty good.
It's a pretty good deal.
And you know, there is this kind of like stadium tax that you'll pay. It's generally more expensive at a ballpark, stadium, arena, what have you. So if you get 3, that can be in the area of $45 to $60. So that's actually not a bad deal.
Yeah. Or you can just drive up there, stay at what's his name's house. The parking.
Yeah. Well, you can park at his house. I'm sure he probably wouldn't want you to stay.
$100. Yeah, probably not stay there. You can't put a tent up, but
no,
maybe you can work out a deal.
But it says something there about everyone's looking for green. Again, we heard it in Milwaukee, and I hope that they get it. I hope that the impression is made that everybody kind of gets a piece of the pie, and that it goes on without a hitch, but we'll see here in a couple weeks.
And I know the tour guides that are offering that NFL tour in Milwaukee, one of the things they said was tours are pretty slim in April. That's just the beginning of their season, and they're not really, they don't get a lot of traffic in April. So this is an opportunity to really sell to the NFL fan that's going to be passing by or even staying in Milwaukee. Because again, 8,000 to 9,000 hotels, people are going to be staying in Milwaukee. They're going to probably be going to restaurants on Wednesday and on Saturday. The Visit Milwaukee is having a big event as well at the Panther Arena on Saturday. After the draft wraps up in Green Bay, people can come back down here and have a great event at the Panther Arena for talking about what exactly the Packers did in the draft and why they did it. It's going to be Jordy Nelson hosting his podcast there with Mason Crosby and Nick Collins. So they're going to really dissect all of the action at the draft and particularly what it means for Green Bay.
And big names there too. Yeah. City of Green Bay also hosting a concert series every night. So, you know, this is a television event. It kind of ends around 10 o'clock. All of a sudden you have people that many of whom would be liquored up that are looking for some place to go. And then they can go do that. Not quite the big names that Detroit has just built in that Eminem is a native of Detroit, but something nonetheless. To talk about the experience too, a bit of a final thought. I think we've mentioned this before, but Lambeau Field is a pivotal part of this footprint. And we've talked so much about tours. It is going to be open in that fans, if they want, can go in. They can pay and sign up for a tour, or they can just go up into the bleachers and sit and watch. And I think that's a unique kind of aspect to this, in that they realize the gem that they have at Lambeau Field. Mark Murphy calls it the most important asset they have. So open it up to people, get that experience. Even for preseason games, tickets are in the hundreds of dollars. Not this. This is a free event. They want to make that lasting impression.
And just think about, people that have kids are going to be bringing their strollers out there. I was looking at the website, says, this is going to be stroller friendly for your families. I think it's going to be an amazing opportunity. And as you said, I hope the green and gold does come to throughout Wisconsin. People can really cash in here because it's going to be an opportunity, but it's going to be memories. I mean, think about the memories of being able to go in Lambeau and have your own personal look at the stadium when it's a little bit quieter, and you're there for history in the making when the draft happens and you see that first round pick. And the future is bright for those players. It's
something that we'll talk about for years. That's a good spot to wrap that thought. I want to pitch ahead, as we have done every week here, to some other content that you can find tied into the draft. And again, so many people are doing this. We talked about Jason's stuff with the Milwaukee specific tours. Nicola Genowitz is doing a story on the bump in airport traffic. Not so much in the Milwaukee area, but really at Austin Straubel up there in Green Bay, and the Appleton Airport, which I didn't even know was as busy as it is. Aaron Maben doing more with local contractors. He's talking, I believe, to popular caterer, I'll leave it at that, that is looking to be involved in some of the events surrounding the draft experience. I need to shout out our sports team. You know them, perhaps, at least I would hope. Tim Van Voren, Brandon Cruz, and Lily Zhao. They have all been logging this kind of independent series that we've called the Draft Diaries, where they are talking to either former Packers or former football players that grew up in Wisconsin or played for the University of Wisconsin about their story, about getting drafted, and kind of what goes into that. Things that we sometimes hear specifically for the players that are about to get drafted, but as the years go on, you may not know the details. You may not know the sweating that they went through, what they felt when they heard their name called, when they got that call from a team president, a general manager, a head coach, what name you. Those are really detailed stories that are really well done. And so a shout out to our sports team on that. And that's a good segue into our next episode, which will be Wednesday, April 23rd. I'm calling that NFL Draft Eve. It is the night before. And so we are going to have some interesting perspectives on what actually happens on draft day. This is perhaps our most sports-focused episode of this podcast. And we're working on getting some guests that I don't want to reveal because schedules can be a challenge, but I also want to tease ahead to that. So something to look forward to. Again, episode 4 dropping the Wednesday night, the immediate night before the draft. As always, thanks for watching. If you're watching with us on Fox Local, listening wherever you get your podcasts. I'm realizing something now I haven't done in any episode is that's thanking the people that are involved. So Jason, thank you for being here and donating your time today. I really appreciate it.
Great to be on. Thanks, Sam.
We've got chief photojournalist and what is it? News content manager, your title there, Kale?
News operations.
News operations manager. It's a work in progress. Kale Zimney on the switcher. We appreciate it. Anthony, what is your specific title?
Digital content creator.
Digital content creator Anthony Mandela has kind of been my co-pilot on this podcast, which we're all doing in addition to all of our daily duties. But it's a passion project. It's a labor of love, and we appreciate it. So thanks again for watching, for listening. We'll see you next week.